Hi, you're listening to Book Chat with author Vivian E. Moore.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Hello and welcome to Book Chat. I am your host, author Vivian E. Moore. Hope everyone had a great week, and I hope that you are having an even better weekend. All right, we're going to get straight to today's show. The title is, I saw that coming, and the topic is When Predictable Plots Disappoint Readers. And that is something that we never, ever want to do, right? Because a great story should keep your readers engaged and excited to turn the next page, right? But what happens when an author makes the plot so predictable that there's no suspense, no surprise, and no reason to keep reading? Well, just like those slow-moving plots and unexplained endings, a storyline that's too easy to figure out, what it can do is it can leave the readers feeling unsatisfied and even frustrated. And we don't ever want to do that. Okay, so let's talk about the problem with predictability. Well, every reader enjoys solving a mystery, uncovering secrets, or just being surprised by an unexpected twist, right? But when a story follows a formula so rigid that every plot is obvious from the start, it loses its ability to engage. Okay, we don't ever want to do that, all right? We don't want to have something that's so predictable that, what's the point of reading it? Well, and the reason why predictable plots are so problematic is because the big twist is so obvious from the start of the first few chapters that there's nothing left. All right. And then the characters follow those cliched story arcs with no depth or originality. And then conflicts resolved too easily. It removes any tension, any sense of tension away from the story. And then readers can guess the ending long before they get there. Okay, those are all the problems with predictability in a story. Okay, you've seen that in movies, and I'm pretty sure you've read it in books. And those were ones that you shelved and never went back to, right? Okay, and the movies got a thumbs down instead of a thumbs up. Well, when the plot is too easy to figure out, readers may feel like they're just going through the motions. Instead of being pulled into the story, they are just passively flipping through the pages. And I've done that quite a few times myself, okay? So, and the reason for that is because you already know exactly where it's headed. And then there is no real challenge or any type of emotional stakes or payoff, if there even is one, right? And you know what? You're left feeling underwhelmed, okay? And that is not a good way that you want your readers to feel. You want them to feel excited to read the book. You want them to feel excited for what's coming on the next page or for what's coming in the next chapter. They can't wait to get to it, and they have the urge to flip to the ending of the story to see how it ends, but it's so engrossing that they won't do that to themselves because they want to know, they want to be surprised about the ending. And so that is one of the reasons why we don't ever want to be predictable when we're writing or creating stories, because we don't want to disappoint the readers, okay? Because it's all about them, right? It's not about us. It is about them. And so let's talk about now why readers expect more. Well, readers just don't want a story, okay? They want an experience, right? They want to feel the tension of an unsolved mystery. They want the thrill of an unexpected twist or the emotional impact of a well-earned resolution. A predictable plot robs them of that experience. And we don't want to do that because readers, they pay to read our books, right? They invest in us just like we invest in ourselves. And we're selling ourselves short when we sell the readers short by making the books predictable. Okay, we're not writing children's stories where it's supposed to be predictable, right? Because it pretty much tells you what's going to happen from the very first words. We don't want that happening, when we're writing for adults, because we want it to be more complex, right? We want to have them sitting on the edge of their seats waiting for what's coming next and not already knowing, well, I already know how this is going to end. So what's the point of, finish reading this book? And I'm not even going to say anything about it to the next person. Or if I do say something to the next person, is to keep them from being underwhelmed as I was when I read it. So we don't want to do that, okay? We want the readers to expect more, and they should expect more from us as writers because they deserve it and we deserve it, okay? And so just to give a few tips about how to do that. Well, you want to write a book that stands out. And it tends to, introduce all of those fresh takes on those familiar tropes. And then it develops those complex characters with those believable motivations, okay? And it keeps those readers guessing with all those unexpected developments, okay? And then it offers that depth beyond the surface level plot, okay? Remember that, because that is so, 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 so important. And another thing is that a story doesn't have to be overly complicated to be compelling, okay? You need to keep that in mind when you're writing because, you may think that it's genius on your part, but actually what it is, it has the same effect of a book that is with an easily guessed plot, okay? When it's so complicated that you have to go back to the beginning of the book just to read it again to make sure that you're on the right track because it's so complicated to figure out, and that's not always a good. You want to keep it simple, but not simple to the point to where your readers can easily guess what's going to happen, or either it's so hard for them to figure it out that they stop reading the book at all. Okay, we don't want to do that because we want to keep them compelled. We want to keep them locked in, okay, engaged in the story because it's so, so, so important, all right? But again, if the journey feels too easy, the readers may lose that interest before they even reach the end. And that's something that we don't want to do. We want to keep them engaged from point A to point B because that is how you gain readers. But if you don't do that, it is also how you lose readers. And that's not a good thing, especially if you want to sell books. You want to make sure that you're writing stories that the readers will love, that they will share, and that those books will be like those classics. They will always be on their bookshelves, as conversation starters and things of that nature. But the key to it all is finding the right balance because a great author knows how to strike a balance between familiarity and innovation, right? So, while specific storytelling structures, they are timeless, but the best stories, they add all of those new layers that keep them from feeling stale, right? So readers want to be challenged. They want to be surprised, and they want to be emotionally invested in your story, okay? And I cannot say that enough. But finding the right balance is a bit of trial and error, right? If you're a new writer and you're just starting out, and you've been reading books on the side to try to help you to become a better writer, you need still to find that right balance. You don't want to lean too much to the right or too much to the left. You want to find that in between point. That's the right balance of creating great stories and becoming a greater author, right? We can take points from some of those great authors that have come before us, right? Because they knew the right formula, the right recipe for writing books and for keeping the readers engaged. And to keep them talking about the book and sharing that information, just writing and telling everyone that they possibly could about how great the story was, how well written the book was. They just can't get enough of it, and they just can't stop talking about it because it left an everlasting impression on them So much so that, they can't wait for that author to come out with the next book. And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we are engaging our readers. We want to make sure that we are, giving them what they paid for because that is so important. And we don't ever, want to leave them saying, well, okay, well, I saw that coming. That was not even hard to figure out. And so, what's the point of reading this book? Like I said, they will shelve it. They will not read it. They will not give you a good review because we want those great reviews. Okay. And we want them coming and we want them positive. And we want to make sure that we are satisfying our customers, correct? Because readers are our customers. Okay. We're putting out a product for them to try. And prayerfully, they will like it, they will love it, and they will share it, okay? Because that is so important. But again, if a book is too predictable, it risks being forgettable. And my goodness, we never ever want that, right? And for readers who crave stories that truly grip them, there is nothing worse than feeling like they could have just written the book better themselves or just skipped to the last page because, they know exactly how it was going to play out. And we don't ever want to do that to the readers. When I came out with my first book many years ago, and I was so anxiety ridden, we talked about that last week because I did not want to underwhelm the readers, but I didn't want to overwhelm them either. But that book to me was a great success because it was my debut book, my very first book that went out to the public, and and I was so pleasantly surprised and so pleasantly pleased with all the comments that I received about the book, and they could not wait for the next story. And that's what we want to do. We always want to keep our readers compelled. We want to keep them engaged. We want to keep them loving on us so we can love on them and create stories that's satisfying and, it won't leave them, just basically underwhelmed. We don't want to do that. We don't want them guessing easily written plots. We want to keep it upbeat. We want to keep it, not too stringent, but we want to make sure that there is a good balance, and that is always important in everything that we do, to have that perfect balance, okay, between not too easy and not too hard, but just straight down in the middle. That's what we want to do. So if you have ever read a book that was too easy to figure out, then you need to talk about it, and let's talk about it in the comments. So tell me if you've read any books that the plots were too easily to figure out, and share it with me across all social media platforms. I am on Facebook. I am on TikTok. I am on Lemonade. I am on Instagram. I am on Threads. You could just, drop your comments there about the show, if you like it, if you dislike it, where it can be improved, all of those things. But, like I always say, how I end every show, I always tell those how you feel about them today. Because tomorrow is not promised, and today may be the only chance you get to say it. So on that note, I love you. I hope you love me back. And until the next time you hear my voice, God bless you, and goodbye.
Loved what you've heard on this week's episode? Well, the answer is simple. It would mean the world to us if you could head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review and feedback. Spreading the word really is the best way to grow our podcast and achieve even greater things. Thank you.